Welcome to episode 127. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today we have James Clingerman. James is a third-degree black belt under Anibal Braga. He spends the vast majority of his time teaching at two different schools in Indiana, Endurance BJJ in Zionsville and Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Greenwood. James also owns and operates the Fight Hub, which is one of the internet's top resource for online instruction in BJJ. He also has his own instructional videos with BJJ Fanatics. So James, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the opportunity to connect in 2019 with the Origin Camp.
Yep.
And so that's when I make first connection. Pretty cool. And we are recording this in July of 2021. How was the COVID situation in Indiana for you?
It wasn't terrible. I think we ended up closing our academies for like 10 weeks, completely shut down. Now we had guys kind of sneaking in training like every day, but yeah, it was kind of crazy because we set up here in my basement. Just like a little 10 by 10 mat area. And I actually taught twice a day, like 4 to 5 days a week, just from my basement. So, we opened it up to obviously any of our students, any of the people in our affiliate, but we had people from all over the world getting on. I know we had like some people from Cuba and England and like a couple other different countries, like on a pretty regular basis. So that was kind of cool. We got to share a little more, I guess, because of the shutdown. But yeah.
Right on. All right. So let's start from the beginning. The beginning with martial arts, then eventually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So how did the martial arts show up in your life?
Oh man. So I started in karate. I think a lot of kids started in karate, and it was literally just like my dad dragging me into the nearest karate dojo to start something because I always had an interest in martial arts, but I just never really had the gumption to go out and do it. Like probably today I would be classified with like social anxiety disorder or something along those lines. I just kind of have like this almost paralyzing anxiety. And, when I was a kid, it was just like, oh, he's a shy kid. He doesn't like doing things. But, once I started kind of understanding the concept of it, I was like, oh, wow, that's probably what was wrong with me. And still is like, I still have anxiety problems, but yeah, like, did karate for a little bit, and it was karate. It wasn't what I wanted to do necessarily. It wasn't real combat, I guess. And from there, kind of dabbled in other martial arts here and there, and then found a judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu school, and finally evolved into Brazilian jiu-jitsu when we had a Brazilian jiu-jitsu blue belt under Royson Horion Gracie moved to Indiana. So.
Right on. Let me expand. You expand a little bit. You mentioned about anxiety, something that I had my struggle, especially with social anxiety too. Growing up, had my difficulties. Did you feel that jiu-jitsu helped you along the way with growing up, or just getting older with social anxiety? Did it help in any way? What do you think?
Yeah, most definitely. Just the ability to be able to go out there and kind of get in a room full of people and, perform, sometimes teach, but just interact with like multiple different people all at once, from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I would say definitely, and then once I started competing and stuff, obviously like you have to get past a lot of that anxiety just to go out and, perform when it kind of counts.
Yeah, no kidding. So when did you start? So what year did you start jiu-jitsu?
I started the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 1997. So like I'm right at 24 years. It was I was actually late June, like early July.
Right on. And when did you feel that you start spending a lot more time in your life and said, you know what, I think this is leading to something that I'm going to be doing for a long time and possibly make a living? It's something you start planning, something that just organically start happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was committed to it right off the bat. Like I loved it. It's all I wanted to do all the time. As far as making a living off of it, just kind of organically happened. I never had the desire to teach. Like I wanted to be a competitor. Early on, I wanted to fight MMA, you know, so I was training, you know, Muay Thai and boxing and all the things. But yeah, I mean, as far as like teaching goes, just naturally, like I said, in karate, it was part of us teaching. When I was doing the judo and the Japanese jiu-jitsu, like I was asked to teach classes and stuff, like the instructor was away. So it was kind of, I enjoyed kind of getting in and sharing things, especially in the Japanese jiu-jitsu, because I would just teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd go, okay, let's do some shrimping and let's do a basic armbar, you know? So that was kind of cool. I liked sharing my knowledge and watching people's eyes, you know, the kind of eyes light up and the light bulb goes off and like, oh man, that's really neat. And then, yeah, just opening the academy, it kind of, so one of my coaches, once, so I started with a guy named Greg Eldred, right? He was under the Hoist and Horion Academy.
Okay.
And then late in 99, I switched over to a guy named Mario Roberto, who was under Anibal Braga. And so Mario still lived in Brazil, but he had these two purple belts, which at that time, purple belts were like, oh my God,
Yeah, no
you know,
kidding.
there's no purple belts anywhere. But so we started training just in their garage. And then there was a father and son. And the dad, Eric, he opened a school, like an actual, like legit, like rented a space and kind of started as a business. And I was the assistant. And so, you know, I was in kind of took on more of an instructor role at that point. And then later that year, my wife, AJ, just, I don't even know what she was doing. She was out shopping or something and just kind of ran into a couple Taekwondo schools while she was out. And was like, hey, do you want a jiu-jitsu program? And, you know, one of them was like, yeah, we actually would like that a lot. And so she went in and, or had me go in and meet with the guy. And I started teaching a couple of times a week there. And then it just grew and grew and grew.
So how was the scene back then in the late 90s in the Midwest?
Yeah, there was nobody knew what jiu-jitsu was
Mm.
really in the Midwest, because we've got a pretty good like wrestling scene.
Uh-huh.
Now I never wrestled, but what you got was a lot of the guys that wrestled and they would be like, oh, that jiu-jitsu stuff doesn't work. And I'll just keep my elbows in. I'll just punch them, you know, and sometimes that works, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because they're fighting white and blue belts, right? But yeah, there was a lot of MMA back then, and it was a lot of these like underground shows where like nobody knew how to find them and stuff. There was no internet, you know, and so there wasn't a way to really find these things. It was all word of mouth, and you show up, and some of them are in a parking lot, some of them are in just like an abandoned warehouse, and
Yeah.
some of them were, you know, they were more organized than that, but most weren't. So yeah, I mean, the jiu-jitsu scene was very, very tiny. Like we ended up having, I think one tournament in Indiana, started in like maybe 98. And it was just in the guy's Taekwondo school. He was a
Mm-hmm.
jiu-jitsu blue belt, and it literally, he would run one match at a time, and it would just go all day long, you know?
Yeah. And what about for you? When did you get involved with when did you compete for the first time?
Oh man. So I started in Brazilian jiu-jitsu in like June. And I think my first tournament was probably August. I
Wow.
started competing right away. Um, Again, and it was in a guy's like his little tiny jiu-jitsu school in the middle of a shooting range. You know, the mat space was probably like 12 by 12. It was the smallest little area. Um, but yeah, I mean, like two of my training partners went up, and it ended up being like the three of us and 9 of that guy's students. So it was like 12 people showed up the whole tournament. Um, but yeah, I did that. And then, so in 97, Horion started the Gracie Nationals for the affiliates out in California. And I believe that was like September, October sometime. And so I flew out there and competed in that as well.
Right on. So how long did it take you to start getting more involved, start looking for tournaments, since there's nothing much going on there? So what was your first experience in a let's say like a bigger event, not an in-house tournament?
Yeah, yeah. So you know the national tournaments were pretty big. I mean, you know that was,
Mm-hmm.
and I know some of the Machado schools compete as well. So I'm not sure how
Okay,
closed it
gotcha.
was, but I mean there were, you know, hundreds and hundreds of competitors. They
Oh,
ran like
nice.
10 to 12 mats. It was a big event. So I did that 97, 98, 99. Um, yeah, and then really, man, I would compete pretty much anywhere in the Midwest. I didn't travel a lot for a long time. I think my first like IBJJF tournament was 2009. I know it was no gi pants 2009. Because it was before we had to have the black belt certifications. And later on, when I was trying to get certified, they wouldn't recognize my degrees, and they said, I wasn't in the system. And so luckily I had competed in 2009, so I was at least in the system there. So technically IBJJF has taken 2 years off my black belt, like, as far as that goes.
Yeah, I know a few people that had some issues with this too, with IBJJF. Yeah, I don't know exactly what triggers this whole thing, but I know friends of mine too that went through the same issue for whatever reason. I don't know. So what do you think? So how do you feel about competing nowadays? Of course, the motivation back then completely different, right? So how do you inspire your students to try out, not to be a high level competitor, just like, hey man, should just give it a try. So how do you feel about tournaments nowadays?
Yeah, so I love tournaments. I honestly believe that anybody that does jiu-jitsu should compete. Not to be a world champion, right? Like there's a very, very select few of those, but everybody should get out there and compete no matter why you do jiu-jitsu. If you do jiu-jitsu for fun, for a social activity, like go out, have fun, hang out with your friends, meet new people, coach them, have them coach you, support each other. If you're doing it for health, well, you will focus on your diet. You'll focus on your exercise. You'll focus on your physical preparation more so leading up to a tournament than you will just normally. It's kind of gives you a little variable there to focus on. If it's for self-defense, there's nothing closer to self-defense than going out there and having that adrenaline dump and having somebody that's legitimately
full resistant,
full resisting, and they want to beat you with everything they have. Like it is their 100% goal that they're going to win that match, so it's kind of that halfway point. But yeah, so I tell them all to go compete, and competition is scary. It's nerve wracking. It increases our anxiety and everything. And I tell them, look, there's two things you can control. You can go out and you can do your best. Sometimes you fight somebody that's just way better than you and you're not going to beat them, but do your best jiu-jitsu. And then we can go back and we can troubleshoot. If you legitimately went out and you did what you know, and you did it to the best of your ability, when you come back to class, we can troubleshoot and figure out what went wrong, what went right. And, that's how you improve. Right. So you can go out and you can do your best and then have fun, and I always tell our guys, like, look, a lot of people want to compete and they can't, they're not able to, they don't have the money, they don't have the means. So, you've got that privilege, like take advantage of that. And ultimately, if you have fun, it's going to be a good experience. If you don't have fun, it's going to be a bad experience. IBJJF actually just brought a tournament to Indianapolis, first one ever, a few weeks ago. And, as soon as it opened, I signed up, gi, no gi, competed. I did the open weights, and, I had some anxiety. Like there was points where my knees were shaking and I was like, starting to get that, like, I don't want to be here type deal. And I legitimately I forced myself to smile, like I was like, man, I'm close to home competing in a major event, like in front of my students and stuff. And I'm going to go out here and do my best jiu-jitsu. And I smiled, and a couple of guys were like, man, it's kind of creepy, you smiling like that, smiling at your opponents. I was like, dude, I was having fun, having a good time, I ended up with 7 matches over the weekend. Like it was crazy. I haven't had that many matches in probably 15, 16 years, so it was a good event. Got a lot of experience out of it. My team overall took second place, gi and no gi,
right on,
for the week. So we did really well. I had a lot of people go out and have fun and do their best, and great weekend.
So a few things that you mentioned here. One is talking with students about you can't control the outcome, right? As simple as it sounds, that's something that I struggle for the big part of my competition career. That brings a lot of the anxiety, the fear of the unknown. Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? And that brings a lot of anxiety. And I just had to learn over the years, just understand that for anyone that is listening, you playing and competing and you start kind of getting like so, you know, putting so much focus on the outcome. And just remember that you can't control the outcome, but all you can do is really influence the outcome in a certain way. How?
Yeah.
Preparing the best way possible, doing what you need to do, and hopefully transferring what you trained and performing. And sometimes I guarantee that you, anyone who's listening right now, if you have a decent experience in competing, there's days that you had like, man, I had a great day and I lost, or a day that are like, dude, I competed really bad today and I won, you know. So
Yeah.
this will happen. So I started to, over the years, to start focusing more on performing, finding a way to like, man, let me see if I can do what I do at the school there. And if you can, again, you have better, it doesn't mean that it doesn't guarantee you anything, but at least you have better odds of achieving the outcome that you want, which is be your best version at the tournament. And like I said, you know, there are times that I have a loss that I was like, dude, I did really well. Did you leave? You're like, wow, that was a war. Sometimes it's not like you did anything wrong. Like, you did great, but guess what? Your opponent did great as well. Maybe could it be a decision? And sometimes could it be the whole match you dominated and made one tiny mistake that you guys know how it is in jiu-jitsu, the snowball effect start happening, and then maybe you get caught or something, right? Also about dealing with the anxiety and everything. And that's the part that I try to talk with the students the most, as far as inspiring people to compete, is the emotional growth that you have from jiu-jitsu. So I always mention to people, I talk with some of friends of mine. A few weeks ago, I had an interview with Todd Fox, and I was mentioned to him, and that's the same thing with you. So we've been doing this for 24 years. You don't have to compete, right, to have the benefits of jiu-jitsu. You don't have to compete. You're still going to get in better shape. You're still going to have the the growth, the emotional growth of feeling comfortable in uncomfortable situations, all those things that jiu-jitsu brings to you. Now, the difference is that when you compete, that gets amplified in a way. So everything that you're going through now is like times 10, like, whoa, this is a lot more intense. Someone in a side mount at the school, and your side mount is like, okay, all right, I'll find my way back. And now in a tournament, like, oh crap. You know what I mean? So now there's a lot more involved. And if you look back in 24 years of your life, imagine like 24 years the way you lived your martial arts journey, and 24 years without never even attempting to go to a tournament. Again, you'd be a confident person, you'd be in great shape, but I guarantee you that your emotional growth in jiu-jitsu would not be the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I agree.
Yeah. And that's something that I try to inspire people to compete to, that as more of as a personal development tool, knowing that no matter what, you're going to have to deal with your emotions, be able to perform. And in life, you need to perform. You need to have a presentation. And sometimes people have a hard time with public speaking, to present a new project in your company or whatever. And then sometimes people will have a hard time performing, or they blank. And I was like, the same thing, go to a tournament and you're like, I don't know what happened. I just blanked and got nervous. And the same thing happened in people having meetings, and they need to do a big presentation, and now they're like, ended up not, presenting stuff the way they want to. So I feel that it's a great drill for life of dealing with your emotions, of like, hey, stay calm down. No one's going to choke you. You're good, able to perform. And I think that's one of the, looking back, and I guarantee you've heard this so many times from students, of people sometimes sharing a little piece of like confidence developing and a thing like that in a work environment situation. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Of like, standing up and then kind of saying something, not in a way being defensive, but just kind of presenting your point of view, that sometimes you'd be like, I don't know, should I say, I'm not sure. And even those things, I feel that little by little, it just gets you to, get out of your shell more. And that's part, especially when you mentioned about the social anxiety and how it helps you with that. Do you have other students that have shared with you about that, the anxiety aspect of it, of training and how jiu-jitsu helped?
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think it goes like, I can't give a specific example right now, but
Mm-hmm.
just small things like just being in traffic, almost getting in an accident, or you mentioned it, like speaking at work, like people are like, man, I come in here and I go out in a tournament, somebody's trying to choke me or they're trying to break my arm. And,
Mm-hmm.
what my coworker thinks about my presentation is nothing like that. That stress isn't there anywhere near as much. Um, but yeah, I think you hear that time after time after time. People are just like, man, like when you get in here and you get to mixing it up and the bad things that could technically happen, even just the physical pressure of somebody being on you, crushing you,
Yeah.
um, that's a lot worse than the stuff, our normal everyday stress, work related stress, stuff like that. Um, I've got one guy, man, when he started, I did not think this guy was gonna make it.
Hmm.
You'd be on him, you'd be in side control and he would like, get off me, get off me, get off me, like instant, like complete total panic attack, right? Like sweating, blacking out, like, and at first it was just like, okay, let's just loosen up. Let's let you work from here. I'll take some pressure off. No, no, no. And I mean, there was one day, like one of my coaches was like kind of holding him down and he literally like climbed the fence and was screaming like, get off me, get off me. And,
Wow.
he's 2 or 3 years in now. And man, like his level of panic is like next to nothing. We sat and talked about it the other day and I can't remember. I think he had escaped somebody's mount and actually passed their guard or something. And after class, he was like, man, he goes, that would not have happened a year ago. He's like, I would have just tapped. Um, but it's cool to see people like overcome, like anxiety and
Sure.
panic attacks and stuff like that. Just through that physical pressure, um, I think the mind and body are closely related in that aspect. Right. Um, but yeah, and that's just one example, obviously. But yeah, it's just our school's been open 21 years, and the amount of people that have come and been like, oh man, like, this happened to me out, wherever, and I just thought like, man, this is kind of like jujitsu, except nobody's trying to break my arm,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial um, journey. So when did you actually open up a school, as far as I rented, and then you kind of feel the butterfly, like, all right, now it's for real, like I'm responsible for this building, I'm responsible for this. When did it happen?
Yeah. So we always say that we've been open since March of 2000. So that's when Eric Sullivan opened Indiana
Hmm.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then I opened my branch of it just in the back of a Taekwondo school, right?
Hmm.
So it was a little pressure, but fortunately the Taekwondo instructor was just like, hey, I know how it is. You can just give us like, I don't know, a percentage of what you make. So we kept tally. So it was less stressful, and I got to kind of work my way up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think so. It was 2003, I believe, when we officially like moved out of the Taekwondo school and we rented a space where it was like, bills were in the thousands every month and like you had to
Hmm.
pay it or you get kicked out. And yeah, that was pretty insanely nerve wracking, and so we went in, we built everything, like all the walls and the changing rooms, and we painted and we put the mats down. And yeah, it was pretty wild. And we were in that location for a little over 5 years, and we had started outgrowing it, but it was right around that mark where we were kind of learning how to run a business. You know what I mean? Before it
Hmm.
was just like, we do jujitsu, come train. And
Just crawling into running a business, right? Just
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah. And, we kind of didn't understand. We're like, why is nobody coming? We're getting
Hmm.
people here and there. And, we just didn't know what we were doing. And then we actually just started taking marketing classes. We met like a
Ah,
coach, started doing that. And
nice.
around, so we did well. We moved into another building. And then around 2008, which is actually like when we had like our recession or whatever, when everything kind of crashed, we actually started doing phenomenally. Like, we, that year we were able, my wife quit working her regular jobs and started working at the academy. And then, so 2008, we kind of got much more comfortable in actually running the academy as a business and kind of understanding, systems and processes and stuff like that. And then we were always doing other things, like we started the Extreme Grappling Open in 2004. So we run a fairly good sized gi and no gi tournament. We had like super divisions and all this stuff. We ran that from 2004 until 2019, I guess. So we didn't do one this year or last. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how was, especially there's, as everyone know, maybe some people are listening to the podcast for the first time, but it's dedicated to entrepreneurs, people have jiu-jitsu in their lives and so forth. So a tough moment in any of the entrepreneur's life is that, like, that basically taking that leap, like, okay, I'm actually signing a lease and stuff like that. So, and it's a point that a lot of people kind of hold back. And that's when the anxiety really kicks in, the fear of the unknown. Like, is this the right time? Should I do it? How was your mindset back then when you're like about to make that decision of opening? How was that?
Man, it was, it was terrible. Like, it was something we had to do, right? Like there really wasn't another choice. So we did it. But, and back then, like, it was like, we were skating by, like we didn't have a lot of money, let's see, what was it? 2000. Yeah. Like I really wasn't working much at the time. Sorry, I was trying to get all my dates right. Yeah, so like it was pretty much my full-time job was teaching jiu-jitsu. I didn't have another job. My wife was working a couple other jobs, and signing this giant lease where we really didn't have any extra income. It was like, well, and we moved far enough away from the Taekwondo school we were teaching in that almost, a very small portion of our students actually were able to follow. But it was just like, hey, we just kind of had the mindset of like this big building on this big road with all these people, like we'll have a sign and it'll be awesome. And 100 people will walk in on day one, so that took a little of the anxiety off, but needless to say, that did not happen. But yeah, it was, it's like buying a house, right? Like there's like 30 pieces of, 30 signatures needed and you're committing to this giant 30-year mortgage. And but yeah, so the lease is like 5 years, and like I said, it was more money than we made, and we were just like, hey, we got to take this leap. If we're gonna do it, we have to do it, and it's like throwing a flying armbar at the end of the match when you're down on points.
Yeah, like, I hear you. So one of the things that I like to ask is about struggles along the way of the journey. You already mentioned one that is kind of marketing related in a way, because you're like, man, how do you get the word out? How we do that? So you mentioned about having that shift when you started to actually taking classes and going after information. What is another struggle that you feel that you went through, and basically, or what did you learn from the situation? How did you overcome? So besides marketing and everything, there's billing, there's staff, there's so many different things that can happen. But what are some of the difficulties that you went through?
Man, I'll tell you one of the big ones that probably a lot of people don't think about nowadays is, when early on, a couple decades ago, there were no jiu-jitsu black belts. Like, I mean, there were, but not in our parts, right? Not around here. And so like being a blue belt, opening a gym,
I hear you.
Everybody was like, what is happening? Like people that come from Taekwondo and the karate and like all these other martial arts where like you can get a black belt in 2 years. They didn't understand like, well, why aren't you a black belt? And it's like, well, man, it takes like 10, 15 years to get a black belt. I'm like, well, I've been training for like, 4 or whatever. And even at brown belt level, like people would just be like, but you're not a black belt. You're not a black belt. And I got that all the time. And, it was like, well, feed me a black belt. give me one of your other black belts and we'll see. But yeah, it was just kind of trying to educate people on why there wasn't that black belt around my waist, you know. And then oddly enough, when I got my black belt, nobody thought that it was some great, big, amazing accomplishment. They just thought like, oh yeah,
Life
you're a
goes
black
on.
belt.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
supposed to be a black belt. You're running a gym, right? And, you know, the people in the know, they were, you know, everybody really thought it was awesome, but just your average person walking in off the street to sign up for classes, they didn't really care, you know, they assume that the owner, the head instructor is a black belt. So I think that was one of the big challenges for years. You know, I got my black belt in 2007. So, you know, there was like 7 years of running a gym where people were questioning, like, why is
I hear you.
this lower ranked guy running a gym? And, you know, they just weren't educated on it. Now, you know, there's like, I think I have 16 black belts under me, you know, so it's definitely a different age.
Cool. Now, let's talk about, we talk a little bit about struggle from a business standpoint. Now I want to talk a little bit about the personal struggle. And so I know that you had an unusual situation that you got shot years ago. So if you can expand on like what exactly what happened, how did actually maybe everything that you learned from jiu-jitsu like help you through the recovery and dealing with this whole situation? So if you can share with us.
Yeah. So I don't know how deep you want to go into the story, but very basically, I was a blue belt. I was leaving my apartment one night and sitting at a stoplight, and this guy in the passenger seat of a car pulled up next to me. So the car pulled up, guy in the passenger seat started, you know, cussing at me and flipped me off, and just being he was drunk and high and just being belligerent. And I didn't really pay any attention to him at all. And then after a while, like he ended up pulling the gun and he shot me. So I got shot right in my left cheek. Kind of like it knocked me over, like it broke my seatbelt retractor, you know. And yeah, like so but yeah, anyway, I ended up driving away. I was in the hospital and stuff, but so I'm blind in my left eye. I've got some hearing loss in my left ear. I've got 2 steel plates in my right cheekbone, just to reconstruct the cheekbone and everything. But yeah, man, like even right
How
off the
long did it
bat,
take? How long did it take the recovery
man,
or the whole thing?
so hospital wise, I think I was in the hospital for 3 days. Not even a full 3. But man, recovery wise, like I was off the mat. So when I say off the mats, I was actually at the grand opening. So this was before the Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu even opened. I was on the mat 2 weeks later. So I got shot February 20th in 2000, and the school opened March 3rd in 2000. But I wasn't training. I wasn't rolling. I wasn't in a gi or anything. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the next couple of months, I would come in and just kind of move around a little bit. But I think it was about 6 months before I was really able to roll and get choked. That was a big problem because I had like scarring on the back of my eye, and like they had closed a hole and they had reattached my retina and some stuff like that. And
Did
so
you ever find a personal?
Yeah, he actually he was caught that night, so he's still in jail. He ended up getting sentenced to 54 years with no parole.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was not a very kind human being.
Wow. He already had, issues in the past,
Yeah, a couple. But yeah,
that is insane, man.
It was one of those things where it was so just completely random and like unprovoked that the judge gave him almost the maximum. He was looking at 58 years and the judge gave him 54. Whereas I sat in on just go off on a little side note. I sat in on the sentencing before him, and it was another guy who had, had the same 4 charges plus 10 others, but it was like, the guy he had shot was also a scumbag and he was facing like 114 years or something. And the judge sentenced him to like 4 years with parole. Like he got almost nothing.
Wow.
And, my initial thought was like, oh my God, my guy's going to be out in 6 months. And then, yeah, after everything, he was just like, hey, like you're a scumbag.
Man.
Yeah.
So how was for you emotionally dealing with that? Because in your mind, you're gonna be like, you're gonna have through, I don't know, I imagine just go through different moments of like anger and depression or whatever. Like, how was emotionally to deal with that? Or be like, dude, why me? You know what I mean? Like, I'm here minding my own business, you know. So how was, I cannot even imagine, man, what you went through emotionally through the whole process.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I hit every single emotion
Can't
to the
imagine, dude.
extreme. Definitely anger and sadness and like all the things, and sitting around going, oh man, if I only left a minute later, and or a minute earlier, even just had I not ran into that light. And yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, obviously super emotional. I didn't know if I'd ever do jujitsu again. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to see again. Early on, I didn't know if I'd be able to hear again. Like part of my face was numb. I didn't know if that sensation would ever come back. Everything was a big question right off the bat. It was unknown, and the doctors didn't know, right? Like when I was in the hospital, like the doctor was just like, oh, you'll never see again. And then the next day I got a little bit of light, and I was like, hey, I can see. And I got kind of excited, and they were like, and I'll tell you, my eye doctor, that guy he did not have great bedside manner. He was very just like, you'll never see again. And then like one day he came in, he's like, yeah, you might get all your vision back. And then the next, he's like, nope, I was wrong. You'll never see again. But it was just like, man, his bedside, every single time his bedside manner was just terrible. And I had to see the guy for a while because I had multiple eye surgeries. Right. And even going to like sentencing, he was questioned. He gave a deposition to the attorneys and stuff. And they're like, hey, we're trying to, make this guy look horrible, and get him jail time because he shot James. And they're like, so we're assuming that this kind of injury is very painful. And he's like, I don't think he was in a lot of pain. Just the weirdest, most random stuff. And like, I remember the attorney, she was even like, I want him to get shot in the head and see how painful it is. But yeah, it was just, it was always a roller coaster. Like, and I kept having these weird things happen. Like the muscles on the side of my head contracted and it locked my jaw shut and I wasn't able to eat right. And I got down, like I walk around now at about 170, 175, and I got down to 150 pounds. I'm fairly small framed. So 20 pounds lighter is I look crazy. But yeah, just, my jaw locked shut and they were talking about removing bones out of my face and cutting muscles and like all this crazy stuff. And yeah, it was just this crazy, roller coaster of like, oh no, you can do jujitsu. Oh, you can't do jujitsu. Oh, you can see. Oh, you're not gonna be able to see. We have to cut your face open. We're okay.
How long do you think that it took for you to be like, okay, now like things are going well as far as like recover everything?
Yeah, so like right off the bat, I was glad to be alive, right?
Yeah, no
Like
kidding.
I
Yeah.
took that as my foremost important thing. Like I'm alive. Whatever else happens from here is what it is, right? As far as the jujitsu stuff goes, like that 6 month mark when I was able to actually go compete, I felt confident that I was going to be able to continue jujitsu for a while. Um, I had issues for a while after that, even up to like maybe a year and a half where, like my eye would hurt or my ear would hurt. I still like, we're 21 years in and I have ear infections all the time, like just constantly. But yeah, it just, I think that 6 month to 12-month mark, I was pretty confident that all was well. And, I even took an MMA fight like 11 months later. Well, 3 MMA fights. Technically I did like an 8-man tournament. I was like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get some fights in and retire. And, so I fought, and even then though, I remember like not being in the greatest health, but that gave me something to really kind of push me and go, okay, like we got to start training. I got to kick up the cardio. I got to spar more. I got, so I trained really, really hard for that. And, I had my physical limitations. A lot of it was just because I had probably not eaten well in 6 months, 8 months or whatever it was, and my weight was so far down. And, but yeah, I would say probably within that like 1 year, maybe 18-month mark, I was starting to like really feel like myself again, feel a little, I guess a little stronger, a little, little more like I was able to do whatever I wanted without too much fear of like a recurring injury or something.
Right on. Okay, now let's get back to the business real quick. So you mentioned that you had those the struggles, the one as far as like, okay, now we'll open the school and people are not coming, so start taking marketing classes. I feel like in business we go through different periods of like, little boosts of like confidence or growth in a business. So this was one of them. When was another notable one that in like, okay, now we got a little momentum, something else helps the school to grow a little more? What was, if there was that moment, what exactly happened? What kind of adjustments did you make? Or is just time, knowledge that you acquired? What was it that helped you like, okay, one more little upgrade?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's anything specific. I'm real big on just continued education, right? Like always improving, whether that's with jujitsu, whether it's with marketing. It doesn't really matter. Like I enjoy learning. I like taking things to the next step. So, we're always trying new little things here, new little things there. Making tweaks to website, making tweaks to like flyers and the way we bring people in. So what I would say probably one of the biggest adjustments we made was hiring intro coaches, right? So when somebody
Really good point.
when somebody comes in, so that we schedule their first meeting and they meet with a coach that's like his job. He brings them in, he gives them a tour. He's the guy that answers all their questions. He goes through a little class with them. He gives them the rules of the academy. He does this very specific class. It's meant to show them some basic fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, kind of, and it's sales processy, right? We're showing them things. We're leading them into like wanting to be there and telling everybody how great the place is. And, it's very scripted, but it's also very educational for them. And then that way they have a kind of a lessened anxiety about entering that group class where like, I had a one, I did this intro with a girl on, actually it was yesterday, and she came into the class and I heard her discussing with one of the guys she was working with. And she goes, I went to another school and they literally threw me in and this guy leg locked me. And she didn't even know how to tap. Right. They never even taught her what a submission was. And then the guy like heel hooked her or something ridiculous. And as much as a lot of us like to believe stuff like that doesn't happen at our gym, I think it happens more than we realize. Like you just kind of assume when somebody comes to a jiu-jitsu, they understand what a submission is and how they have to tap. And sometimes they just don't, so yeah, I think that was a big thing. And right now I've got a fantastic guy. He does a lot more than just the intros, but so he leads them through the one-on-one or two-on-one. Sometimes we have to double up just because of time. But they get a full tour. They get the rules. They understand positions and what a submission is and tapping and basic gym etiquette and like, let go when someone taps. And tap when you need to, those type of things and what's acceptable and what's not. And then he also teaches, we've got a 8 class. So it's basically a 4-week rotating, very, very fundamental curriculum. It's like 3 things from guard, 3 guard passes, 3 things from mount, 3 mount escapes, 3 things from rear mount, 3 rear mount escapes, and so he teaches that class. And so it's kind of this funnel that we've created where he's their guy. They meet day 1, and then he kind of is the guy that they hang out with that first month. And then they can move on into our foundation class and work with more higher ranks and, higher rank coaches and stuff like that. So that was a really big jump we made. I guess more recently it's been a year or 2 now, but we've had the intro coaches for a while, but them kind of funneling into that separate group intro class was one of the newer things we've implemented.
Yeah, dude, this is definitely a game changer. Have here in Arizona, we did the same, have someone responsible for that, for the intro, so forth. And one thing that maybe some people are listening right now would be, let's say you do have, if you're listening right now, you do have a jiu-jitsu school. So sometimes it depends what level where you at right now in your journey. As far as most of the schools start with assistant, when you do, let's say you do have an assistant coach, you start as a trade. Oh, okay, you help out, with the class, and then you don't pay because you can't afford someone, right? And but little by little, there's so much this is gonna take you, of someone just covering, like, hey, can you teach him real quick here? Like, in the beginning of the journey, it is what it is, like, not always gonna have helpers in the beginning. I understand that, but at some point you need to make that leap of, what, even whatever you want to do, you can have a salary, you can do by or use a commission or both, whatever. But you need to have, at some point, this needs to happen. It can't be just a favor, like, hey, bring it in, hey. And that means then this person needs to be available all the time. Because one of the things that I have through, like, I went through the same stuff, like someone just helping to then to pay, so little by little you start, as the academy grows, you can start giving more responsibilities to the coaches. Because before, I got to a point years ago that was like, okay, when you do have an appointment and then the person come in, and then what happened is sometimes last minute someone did just a walk in, and then, as I mean, if the assistant was here, we could do it. So I started to just have pay the assistant to be there no matter what. If there's no one to teach, and at least there's an extra body in class that's going to help to be an assistant to walk around. If that's the case, if there's just, but there's always like something, to help out, be a partner for someone or whatever. But yes, this is absolutely a game changer for people that maybe right now you do have a assistant coach, but it's not a position that it's paid yet. If you can make the adjustments to get to the person, to get on a payroll or not, is so much better than just favor. It's almost not the same, but it's the idea too of sometimes I used to have like internet people that were just going to do some trade. Hey, I'm training and make but now it was like forever to get anything that is kind of like a favor in a way, sort of. Now I'm like, so I feel bad. I'm like, hey, dude, hey, we need that, hey. But now when you get the relationship that, okay, you're actually part of the crew, part of the team. This is the responsibilities. So absolutely, it's a game changer, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've all got people that can help out, right? Like anybody that's a high level blue or above can help with something. But I'll tell you, people are they do a much better job when they're getting paid. So like with our guy, he does video editing for me. He does website work. He does a lot of things. So he wears a lot of hats.
Cool.
And we compensate him for all of those, so, and it's something where like, it's like, oh, you get X amount per intro, but then you're on commission for people who sign up. But then also, like, if you sign up X amount of people, there's bonuses involved.
Yeah.
So, we want to incentivize him to get the people signed up. We want him to get more people signed up. We want him to be out there bringing people in, and it's kind of his own separate business. He has this business of bringing us students, and then our business is giving them a fantastic jiu-jitsu product. So yeah, it helps. It helps so much once we really had people in going, all right, here's how you make money doing jiu-jitsu. But yeah, that was one of the biggest game changers, is just having those people that's their job, and it freed up a lot of my time, and it just made a good introductory experience way better for everybody, I think.
Okay. What is one of the best pieces of advice that you have received running the business? Maybe the advice could be someone told you, maybe you read something in a book or whatever. What comes to your mind when you say this piece of advice that helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Man, it's a little cliche, but like just make sure you're working more on the business than you are in the business. You know, like I get in the habit of I'm at the gym, I teach class, and then I clean the mats, and then I clean the bathroom, and then I'm doing all these
Yeah.
little things, and I feel like I'm being ultra productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, the toilet needs clean, but it doesn't need me to clean it, right?
Yeah.
What would be better than me cleaning the toilet is paying somebody $5 or $10 to go clean, and then me going and sitting down and writing emails or editing more videos or doing something that's going to bring new members, right? So I think just that was one of the big things in the early days where I felt like, man, I'm doing all these things and
Yeah.
I'm here 8 hours a day and but I was in the
Like
building.
busy work.
Yeah, busy work, right? Like a good analogy. One of my students actually had. So we went out to dinner. It was like my wife and I and three of our students, and two of the students started dogging on him for hiring a maid. And they're like, man, you pay this lady come in and clean your house, blah blah blah. And he goes, look, man. He goes, I make $100 an hour. I pay her $25 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, so me paying her $25 makes me 75, you know? And I was like, oh, that's good. And he's like, I learned that from you guys.
Yeah.
But, you know, and the other students, they sat because they weren't business owners, right? They didn't understand. And they were just like, oh, but you know, I think he conveyed that in a way that they understood, even not owning.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it made sense. It was like, yeah, man, work on it, not in it.
So not that you want anything different in your life, of course, but like if you look back to the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey and you could have a conversation with your younger version, what could it be a piece of advice that you could mention to him? Like I said, you know, everything happens the way it happens. Not that you want anything different, but like maybe this type of, we have to live, we have to experience, you know, everything or whatnot. But like looking back, and it's more like we just already mentioned one, which is a big one, but it's maybe a piece of advice or some type of mindset for anyone that is starting that entrepreneurial journey, be like, that would probably come handy to me, you know, earlier in your career.
Yeah, man, I think the big thing is just total immersion, right? Like, if you're going to run a business, you should run a business to the best of your ability. And if you don't have the knowledge, then you need to go out and gain it.
Yeah.
And that's books, that's podcasts, that's find a real life coach, you know? But yeah, you know, just make some investments in your own business education. And there's plenty of books out there. There's free sources, you know, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube, and there's podcasts that can guide you along. But yeah, just total immersion into that business mindset. And I think that's really like, it's funny because like competitive wise, like I was great all throughout brown, and then I got my black, and I haven't competed as well at black belt. And so you can look at that two ways. You can go, well, now you're fighting black belts and the competition's way better, right? And that's absolutely true. But also right around that time is when I really started focusing on my business, right? It's like if the business doesn't exist, I can't do jiu-jitsu anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If the business doesn't exist, I don't have a car. I don't have a place to live. So I turned the focus away from my personal jiu-jitsu and onto learning about the business, right? And it made leaps and bounds. And it probably helped a little bit that I was now a black belt. People walked in and they saw that belt around my waist. But yeah, it was just total immersion. Like all I did all day long was listen to, you know, DVDs and read books and, you know, read these emails and these newsletters. And I just immersed myself in that and tried to follow along and, you know, actually like implemented the things, right? Like money's attracted to speed. you can read all the things, you can know all the things, but if you're not implementing, if you're not doing, then
executing,
then it goes nowhere. Yeah.
So as far as you mentioned about books, is there any book that comes to your mind that made a big impact on you? Could it be personal development? Could it be business? But when you think about a book that at some point made an impact on you, which one comes to your mind?
Yeah. So honestly, man, any of like the Dan Kennedy books, oh shoot, the first one I read really pulled me in, and I can't even think of what it was. It was a no BS guide to, oh good Lord. Dan Kennedy's got so many no BS guides to different things, right? He's got like social media marketing and all these. I think it was wealth attraction, actually, if I remember right. I think it was the no BS guide to wealth attraction, and just kind of looking at the different mindset that it takes to make money. It follows a lot along the lines of like Robert Kiyosaki's like Rich Dad Poor Dad, except it's way more in depth, and it doesn't look at the real estate quite as much. It looks more as like you as an entrepreneur. So that would be my highest recommendation. Like if you're going to pick up a book and read it, like that's cool. Probably my all-time favorite. Maybe because it's the first one I read, and it's the first one that really like kind of
in the beginning. In the beginning, most of the books that made an impact on me, I was kind of like in the process of getting involved and learning. I think it's just like boom, like oh wow, and then little by little we start becoming like pages of books. Like if I get a book and then one page stood out to me, and my investment's already worth it. Something I can really implement that page.
Yeah,
it's like going to a seminar and learning one move. Like got it.
That's what I tell guys. Like, I've been to seminars where we'll go 4 hours and the guy shows 3 moves. And I've been to seminars where it's 2 hours and the guy shows 40 moves. And I lean a little more toward like when I teach, like, hey, I'm going to show a lot today, but my goal is for you to find one golden nugget that you want to expand on. Right. So yeah, exactly. If one, even if the whole book is garbage, but you learn one little thing that flips a switch for you, it's totally worth it.
Now talk a little bit about the Fight Hub. When did you start it? What is the mission of the website?
Yeah. So the Fight Hub actually started, man, I'm trying to think. So I did a DVD with Chris Lytle. He came to my school and taught a seminar, and I said, how would you feel about me filming this and maybe turning into a DVD? And he was like, yeah, I think that would be great. So we did that. And then I recorded a few of my own seminars and made DVDs out of those. And I was like, I need a place to sell these. And there wasn't really a good, there was no BJJ Fanatics or any of that stuff. So I started this little website that had like 5 DVDs on it. And then just talking to a couple different companies like Gameness and Ring to Cage and Rev Gear and stuff like that. We started talking about like drop shipping, affiliates and stuff like that. And so the website's gone through several different, themes and stuff. But I started selling other gear on it. And it's actually being revamped right now. But yeah, it really just started as a place. Like I was like, hey, how can I sell these couple of DVDs? And also like, I don't want to stock a million different products. So like my students can get online and order and then just get it shipped to them. Right. Now I have a pretty decent pro shop at both of our academies, but yeah, it's still kind of the theory behind it is like, I have like this one stop for like all these different companies. And then my students can get on and look and go, hey, they can tell me what they want, or they can just order it right there online. But yeah, it's actually really out of date right now. So we're completely revamping it. It looks amazing. But now, yeah, like we've got streaming products. So I've expanded, like, I've got my own products on there, and then we've got like different instructors. So you can buy the physical DVD, you can buy the streaming product. What else do we have? We've got an affiliate. So like you could start your affiliate and send your students that if you don't have a store, and make 10 to 50% on those sales. We've got a school listing on there. I feel like I'm missing something. It's got a lot. It's got a lot on it. It's a cool site, but like I said, it's actually the site itself is very out of date. But hopefully it'll be updated within I would say by August 1st of this year is the goal, the new launch date.
Yeah. Cool. So now getting close to the end of the interview. So what do you got exciting going on? What you got? Besides, you already told one, revamping the website. That's cool.
Yeah, man. So that, and then we've actually got another website coming out. So for years now, we've run kind of a jiu-jitsu curriculum. We call it the foundation. And just, I believe personally that you need a strong foundation in order to build, right? Like the higher the skyscraper, the deeper the basement. And you have to have a good solid foundation in anything you're trying to learn, whether it be self-defense or jiu-jitsu or, mechanics, like whatever. You always need a strong foundation. So we're about a year in filming, and I'm finally getting all the filming done. I've got maybe 1 or 2 more sessions of filming. BJJfoundation.com or BJJ.foundation should be up. So that'll be a full membership site. And then we've got a couple tiers. So we'll have like free tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So hopefully that'll be out by the end of the year. That's my big exciting thing. Partially because I've sat down to film it several times and then like, oh, the guy that I'm filming with moved, or this guy got a different job. And so, so it's my intro class guy, Ryan. He's my filming dummy, and then he's actually editing the video and he's doing the website. But yeah, that's my big exciting thing. And then, yeah, I'm hoping to get a few more competitions in. Actually, I think I've got maybe a small tear in my right meniscus. So we'll see how that plays. Yeah, I know. It just started this week. So we'll see how that plays out.
Right on. James, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time. If people want to find you online, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably like Instagram or Facebook. It's really easy. It's James Clingerman. Clingerman's with a C. But yeah, if anybody has questions about anything or whatever, they just want to reach out, or if you're ever in the Indianapolis area, swing by and see us. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I respond to messages pretty quickly most of the time. But yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any questions, or if you have a guest suggestion, you can always send me Gustavo on Instagram, Gustavo Dantas BJJ. And I see you all soon. Who's